Emergency, 1972 to 1979, wasn't just a hit TV drama. It was a tribute to real-life heroes, bringing the action and courage of paramedics and firefighters into American living rooms. The show's cast became beloved figures, admired for their on-screen bravery and charisma. But behind the scenes, life wasn't always so heroic. Over the years, several key actors from the series have tragically passed away, some from illness, others from personal struggles that remained hidden from the public eye. In this emotional look back, we honor the stars of Emergency, who are no longer with us, and explore the sorrowful truths behind their untimely deaths. Julie London was born on September 26, 1926, and stepped into the role of Nurse Dixie McCall in Emergency in 1972 at age 46. As Dixie, she was a poised and commanding force, the anchor of Rampart Hospital's ER. Her calm in crisis and unwavering support for the paramedics made her a fan favorite. But Julie's composed on-screen persona masked a life filled with emotional wreckage and self-destruction. Raised by vaudeville entertainers, her childhood was spent on the road, unstable, unrooted, and exposed to adult environments far too early. She learned to repress emotion behind a sultry facade, a coping mechanism that both defined her brand and haunted her personal life. Her Hollywood career began with promise, but she was often objectified, promoted more for her sex appeal than her acting chops. Her early marriage to Dragnet creator Jack Webb was marred by jealousy and control. Webb allegedly demanded total creative dominance and emotionally manipulated her throughout their union. She fled into the arms of Bobby Troup, but even that marriage, though long-lasting, was far from ideal. Julie was notorious for her addictions, chain-smoking 3 packs a day, drinking heavily, and popping tranquilizers just to sleep. These habits decimated her once velvety voice and left her with chronic respiratory issues. Industry insiders whispered about her erratic behavior on set in later years, especially during her final album's recordings, where she frequently clashed with producers and stormed out of sessions mid-track. Her biggest professional disappointment came when she was passed over for a major film role in The Sandpiper, a part she desperately wanted but lost to Elizabeth Taylor. In her later life, she withdrew from public appearances, rarely speaking to the press or even close friends, consumed by health issues and growing bitterness over being remembered more for her looks than her talent. Julie London died on October 18, 2000, in Los Angeles, at the age of 74, from cardiac arrest and complications due to lung cancer. Her estate, estimated at $10 million, included real estate, music royalties, and vintage jewelry, but legal disputes quietly followed among heirs. Tim Donnelly, born on September 3, 1944, began playing Chet Kelly in Emergency in 1972 at the age of 28. On screen, Chet was the wisecracking fireman whose practical jokes, big heart, and chaotic energy brought levity to the harrowing emergencies depicted on the show. Viewers loved his balance of charm and foolishness. He became an unlikely favorite, especially among younger audiences. But while Chet thrived in chaos, Tim Donnelly quietly carried the weight of generational dysfunction. Born into Hollywood royalty, his father a studio executive, his brother a director, Tim's life seemed paved for success. Yet behind closed doors, his childhood was scarred by neglect and emotional coldness. He later admitted in rare interviews that his mother suffered from undiagnosed mental illness and would often lock herself in her room for days, leaving young Tim to fend for himself emotionally. His early acting years were marked by rejection, and though Emergency gave him stability, Tim's off-screen attitude wasn't always easy. Crew members described him as unpredictable and moody, especially when creative decisions didn't favor his character. Rumors swirled that he clashed bitterly with producers toward the end of the series, demanding a bigger role or threatening to walk. When his acting offers dried up after 1984, Donnelly became reclusive, disappearing from public life and refusing interviews for decades. Though never involved in headline-worthy scandal, he struggled quietly with a deep mistrust of Hollywood and rarely spoke to former castmates. His personal life was equally enigmatic. He never married, and insiders claimed he had a string of secretive relationships, mostly with younger actors, which he kept hidden due to fear of industry backlash. In his later years, he battled chronic illness and underwent surgery in 2021, complications of which led to his death on September 17, 2021, at age 77 in Santa Fe. His estate, primarily made up of modest savings, collectibles, and royalties from syndication, was valued around $1 million. Vince Howard, born on July 21, 1929, took on the role of Motorcycle Officer Vince in Emergency. In 1972, at the age of 43, calm, efficient, and often the bridge between the chaos of an emergency scene and the first responders trying to manage it, his character became a fan favorite, not for flashiness but for his reliable, quietly heroic presence. Born into a working-class African-American family in St. Louis during the Great Depression, Vince grew up in a segregated, racially hostile America. His father died when he was 7, and his mother, working 2 jobs, was barely able to support her children. Vince turned inward, hiding his emotions behind a disciplined exterior. He joined the U.S. Army, not out of patriotic fervor, but simply to escape poverty. His early career as a singer in the Rhythm Aces and later Billy Ward and his Dominoes offered brief flashes of glamour, but touring life was brutal. He once confessed that racial taunts and backstage segregation almost pushed him to quit show business entirely. His acting career began in the early 1960s, but his ascent was slow, hindered by the industry's tokenism and its reluctance to offer black actors anything beyond minor parts. A particularly humiliating low came when he was cut entirely from a 1965 network pilot after executives decided the racial optics might hurt ratings. He battled quietly for every role, and although he built a resume of over 100 credits, he was rarely allowed to lead. Howard's personal life was no less turbulent. He was married 3 times, each ending in either quiet estrangement or unceremonious divorce. Friends noted his struggle with alcohol in the late 70s, a coping mechanism for career stagnation and loneliness. Though he remained scandal-free in the public eye behind closed doors, he was known for unpredictable outbursts and reclusive tendencies. After retiring in 1994, he lived modestly in a small home in Los Angeles, rarely seen in public. Vince Howard died on July 18, 2002, just 3 days before his 73rd birthday, from leukemia. His estate was modest, around $1.5 million, mostly from residuals and pension, with no heirs publicly acknowledged. Michael Norell, born on October 4, 1937, took on the role of Captain Hank Stanley in Emergency. In 1972, at the age of 35, on screen, he was the embodiment of calm under pressure, a commanding presence who anchored the team during the chaos of fires and rescues. His quiet authority and compassionate leadership made him a fan favorite, a rock in the storm of the show's weekly disasters. But Norell, much like his character, spent a lifetime burying his own. Raised in a strict military household, Michael's father, a career Army officer, enforced discipline to the point of cruelty. Emotional expression was punished, and Michael grew up internalizing every fear, insecurity, and ambition. He joined the Army himself, later working as a journalist, but his true passion was performance. Behind the scenes of Emergency, he was well-liked, but obsessive over his image. Colleagues whispered about his tendency to rewrite his own lines, and he was rumored to have had a contentious relationship with producers when his screen time was reduced in later seasons. The biggest blow to his ego came after the series ended, when his leading man aspirations were crushed by constant rejections and his TV face label. That bitterness turned him towards screenwriting, where he found some redemption but never the fame he craved. His personal life remained tightly sealed. Though he was briefly married in the 1970s, the union ended in a swift divorce amid speculation of infidelity and power struggles. He never remarried and had no known children. In his later years, he became reclusive and reportedly battled depression, especially after several of his TV movie scripts were shelved due to network disputes. He died on May 12, 2023, at the age of 85 in Huntington, Pennsylvania, alone and quietly. His assets included a modest Pennsylvania home, residual checks from TV reruns, and intellectual property from unproduced screenplays. His net worth was estimated between $2 to $3 million, but the emotional wealth he sought, recognition, legacy, affection, remained just out of reach. William Boyett, born January 3, 1927, first appeared as Chief McConaughey in Emergency in 1976, when he was 49 years old. On screen, Boyett embodied stability and respect, a composed and commanding presence that exuded calm under pressure. As Chief McConaughey, he was the trusted superior who kept the station grounded, a figure fans respected for his authority and composure. Boyett's childhood was marked by poverty and instability. His father was a traveling salesman with a violent temper, while his mother moved frequently to escape domestic strife. Though he won accolades as a young Shakespearean performer, Hollywood never fully embraced him. Despite decades of work, he remained on the fringes, typecast and underappreciated, even mocked by some younger peers as just another web cop. His career suffered a devastating blow in the late 1980s when a private voice recording, intended for therapy, was leaked by a disgruntled assistant and revealed his bitter resentment toward the industry that kept him on the sidelines. Though never involved in any public scandal, those close to him knew of his volatile temper and controlling nature behind closed doors. His 48-year marriage was far from idyllic. Friends described his household as tense, with his wife often treated more like a subordinate than a partner. One of his sons reportedly became estranged from him for over a decade after a violent confrontation over career choices. In his final years, Boyd struggled with worsening health, kidney failure, chronic pain, and a deepening depression that kept him largely homebound. He died on December 29, 2004, in Los Angeles, just shy of his 78th birthday, from complications related to pneumonia and kidney failure. At the time of his death, his estate, consisting of a suburban home, savings, and long-term investments in film royalties, was valued between $2 to $3 million. While many remember him as the stoic face of order, those closest to him recall a man haunted by the spotlight he never quite caught. Ted Garing, born on April 6, 1929, took on the role of Clinton in Emergency. In 1972, at the age of 43, appearing as various rugged characters connected to fire or police departments. Though often cast in minor roles, Garing's stern expressions and gravelly voice lent credibility to the uniformed men he portrayed, earning him quiet admiration from fans who recognized his face even if they didn't know his name. Raised in rural Wisconsin during the Great Depression, he grew up in an emotionally cold household with an alcoholic father and a distant mother. He was mocked as a child for his lanky build and deepening voice, which became a source of both shame and power. In Hollywood, he was typecast early on as a tough guy, but constantly battled rejection and was often underpaid for work that others used as a stepping stone. Despite his clean public image, Garing struggled with a hidden gambling addiction that nearly bankrupted him in the late 1970s. Insiders whispered about unpaid debts and tense altercations with loan sharks on studio lots. His biggest career failure came when he lost a lead role in a promising 1980s police procedural due to reports of erratic behavior on set, allegedly linked to heavy drinking, though he denied it. In his personal life, things were no less stormy. His marriage to Barbara Coates was riddled with long periods of silence and emotional distance, particularly after the tragic death of their teenage son in a car accident in 1984, a loss that shattered their home. Garing withdrew, falling into a quiet depression that he masked with work. Though he continued acting into the 1990s, the sparkle had faded. He passed away on September 28, 2000, in California, at the age of 71 from lung cancer, a likely consequence of decades of smoking on and off set. At the time of his death, his net worth was approximately $1.5 million, consisting of modest real estate, residuals, and investments. Yet many who knew him said the wealth never filled the emotional void he carried quietly until the end. Stephen Marlo, born July 13, 1927, stepped into the world of Emergency. In 1973, at age 46, playing the enigmatic role of Old 87, a reference either to a storied fire engine or a retired crewman of legendary status. Though his appearance was brief, it embodied the show's core spirit, resilience and service in the face of crisis. But Marlo's real story reads more like a novel of survival and silence. Born Morris Miller in a poor Jewish neighborhood of New York, he was abandoned at age 5 and shuffled through abusive foster homes. He ran away at 13, lied about his age to join the Army Air Corps during World War II, and later reinvented himself in Los Angeles. He trained under Lee Strasberg and became known for playing sinister characters in gritty B-movies. But his rise was anything but clean. In the 1960s, Marlo was quietly blacklisted by a major network after an alleged altercation with a casting director. Rumors suggested he pulled a knife during a heated audition dispute, a story he always denied. He also reportedly struggled with gambling debts during the 1970s, leading to a nervous breakdown that forced him to retreat from acting for several years. His return to Hollywood was low-key, and he never fully regained his momentum. Marlo never married, and his personal relationships were often short and stormy. A decades-long rumored affair with a much younger actress ended in scandal when she accused him of manipulation and professional sabotage. Friends said he lived like a monk in later years, devoting himself to Catholicism and teaching method acting to at-risk youth. He performed a one-man show titled The Fallen Soldier, a semi-autobiographical piece that hinted at war trauma and personal regret, though he never confirmed how much was true. Stephen Marlo died on November 7, 2019, in Everett, Washington, at the age of 92. He left behind few possessions, a rent-stabilized apartment, handwritten journals, and a collection of war memorabilia. His estate was valued at around $1.2 million, mostly from residual checks and a trust fund he quietly set up for veterans. Lou Brown, born March 18, 1925, joined Emergency in 1972 at age 47 as the first sheriff, a role that seemed tailored for him, stern, commanding, and grounded in military precision. His character offered brief but memorable appearances, often stepping in during rural incidents with a gravel-voiced authority that left an impact. A decorated Marine Corps veteran and Purple Heart recipient, Brown brought a soldier's grit to every role, but his transition into Hollywood came at a steep cost. Though he studied theater at UCLA, Brown found the film industry resistant to casting veterans in anything beyond typecast roles. Over time, he became known not only for his dependable acting but for his bitter critiques of the phony layers of showbiz. Off-set, he was described by some colleagues as difficult, demanding multiple script rewrites, challenging directors, and refusing to do retakes unless he agreed with the first cut. Behind closed doors, he had a notoriously strained relationship with his children. One son, a struggling actor himself, accused Lou of being emotionally abusive and trying to sabotage his career out of envy. Brown denied the allegations, but the rift was never repaired. His 38-year marriage ended in divorce in the 1980s, quietly and without tabloid noise, but friends close to the couple admitted infidelity and controlling behavior may have played a role. Though Brown avoided major public scandal, his private life was full of quiet turmoil, decades of friction with studios, alienation from family, and the constant struggle between pride and regret. He died on July 27, 2014, in La Jolla, California, at the age of 89. His estate, which included residuals from past films, a coastal condo, and veteran benefits, was valued between $1 to $2 million. In the end, Lou Brown left behind a legacy as a tough man both on and off the screen, revered by some, resented by others, and remembered for always playing life with the same hard edge he brought to the camera. Kip Nan, born May 27, 1945, took on roles in Emergency, beginning in 1972 at age 27, most notably portraying Billy Hanks, a young, determined character who embodied the restless optimism of a new recruit eager to make a difference. Born in Wichita, Kansas, and raised in a household dominated by a cold, disciplinarian father, Kip learned early to suppress emotion and project confidence. He served in Vietnam, a chapter he rarely spoke of, where he allegedly witnessed several traumatic incidents that left him with lifelong bouts of insomnia and a volatile temper. Though he returned home and launched a successful acting career, he carried a latent darkness that emerged in unpredictable ways. After early television success, including Magnum Force and The Waltons, his career plateaued due to rumors of on-set manipulation and jealousy-fueled conflicts with castmates. His most crushing professional blow came in the late 1980s, when a lead role in a regional theater tour was rescinded after a backstage fight with a producer, an event that unofficially branded him difficult and sent him retreating to Kansas City Theater, where he rebuilt from the margins. Niven's personal life was no less tumultuous. His first wife, Susan, was killed in a car accident in 1981, an event that devastated him emotionally and drove a wedge between him and his children, whom he was later accused of emotionally neglecting. His second marriage to actress Linda Lavin began in glamour but ended in acrimony, with Lavin citing emotional cruelty in court documents, allegations Kip never publicly responded to. His final years were quieter, but still laced with tension. Colleagues described him as brilliant yet aloof, prone to isolation and sudden mood swings. He died on May 6, 2019, in Kansas City, Missouri, at age 73 from a heart attack. His estate, valued between $2 to $3 million, included royalties, a collection of war memorabilia, and multiple properties in Missouri. Gary Crosby was born on June 27, 1933, and appeared in Emergency in 1972 at the age of 39, taking on the role of Tom Wheeler, a brash, streetwise character who added grit and unpredictable tension to the emergency response dynamic. Known for his swagger and intensity, Wheeler often clashed with colleagues, reflecting the internal volatility Crosby himself wrestled with. As the eldest son of Bing Crosby and actress Dixie Lee, Gary's life was a storm of contradictions, immense privilege shadowed by deep emotional trauma. Behind the polished Hollywood image was a boy routinely humiliated, beaten, and made to compete for his father's approval. His 1983 memoir, Going My Own Way, exposed what he called a childhood of terror and beatings, painting Bing Crosby not as a warm crooner, but as a cold tyrant, a claim that shattered the Crosby family image and ignited public outrage. Many accused Gary of exploiting his father's legacy, and some family members cut ties permanently. He spiraled into alcoholism during his 20s, blowing through inheritance money, wrecking relationships, and becoming a fixture in LA's underbelly of hard partying and fast cash. Though he tried to clean up, relapse was frequent, and producers often hesitated to hire him due to his reputation for tardiness, mood swings, and drunken rants on set. One of his lowest career moments came during a failed Vegas residency in the 70s when he was found passed out backstage, leading to canceled shows and public disgrace. His romantic life was equally chaotic. 3 marriages, all ending badly, and estranged children who later described him as absent or emotionally erratic. In the years before his death, he lived more quietly, but reportedly had mounting medical bills, feuds with ex-spouses, and ongoing resentment over how the world remembered his father but not him. Gary Crosby died of lung cancer on August 24, 1995, in Burbank, California, at the age of 62. His estate, valued at around $14 million, included residuals, licensing rights, and real estate holdings, but disputes over the Crosby name continued to haunt his legacy. Bobby Troup was born on October 18, 1918, and began portraying Dr. Joe Early in Emergency in 1972 at age 54. Dr. Early was the calm, cerebral heart of Rampart's emergency staff, a steadying influence and quiet mentor. Born into a strict military family, Bobby grew up under immense pressure to succeed. Though he eventually found fame with his jazz classic, Get Your Kicks on Route 66, much of his life was haunted by the feeling that he was always living in someone else's shadow, first his father's, then his wife's. His marriage to Julie London was both a creative partnership and a battleground. Close friends described Troup as patient in public but volatile in private, prone to explosive arguments, especially when Julie's career outshone his. Though he never admitted it, Bobby struggled with deep professional jealousy. He resented being seen as Julie's husband, rather than as a standalone talent. His career was peppered with unrealized projects, scrapped jazz albums, failed nightclub ventures, and even a controversial screenplay about post-war America that was shelved due to political undertones. He had a reputation among musicians for being controlling in the studio, often rewriting others' compositions or taking credit for arrangements he didn't create. Despite his suave exterior, Bobby harbored insecurities that led to erratic financial decisions, lavish purchases, risky investments, and gambling losses that quietly drained his wealth. While he remained publicly scandal-free, there were whispers of infidelity during his earlier years on the road, and he was known to frequent underground poker circles in LA during the 1960s. In his final years, he faced declining health and grew increasingly reclusive, reportedly spending days holed up in his home studio obsessing over half-finished musical compositions. He died of a heart attack on February 7, 1999, in Sherman Oaks, California, at the age of 80. His estate, valued at approximately $5 million, was built on music royalties and television earnings, but multiple unpublished works and unreleased recordings remain locked in legal limbo. William Bryant, born January 31, 1924, played various engine company captains in Emergency. Beginning in 1972, at the age of 48. On screen, he radiated authority, the kind of steady leadership that grounded high-stakes scenes in calm pragmatism. But behind the polished facade lay a complicated man who lived much of his life in the shadow of others. Born William Robert Klein in Detroit, he grew up in a fractured household, raised primarily by his grandmother after his mother was institutionalized for schizophrenia and his father abandoned the family. He rarely spoke of his childhood, though those close to him described a man haunted by early trauma and emotionally closed off. After the war, Bryant stumbled into acting by chance, spotted by director Henry King while working as a security guard in Los Angeles. Though he worked steadily for decades, he was never quite able to break into leading roles, frequently typecast as military man or stern authority figure. His biggest professional disappointment came in the mid-1960s when a signed role in a major Western series was abruptly recast after producers felt his emotional range was too limited. Industry insiders often labeled him stoic to a fault, with some claiming he deliberately sabotaged more dynamic actors he perceived as competition. Off-set, Bryant lived a reclusive life in Malibu, but there were whispers of darker behavior, alcohol-fueled outbursts, a secret gambling addiction, and an alleged long-term affair with a married co-star that nearly cost him a recurring television role. He was married once, briefly, in the 1950s, but the union ended with bitter court disputes and accusations of domestic volatility that were quietly settled out of court. He remained estranged from his only daughter, who later wrote in a memoir that she knew him only from the distance of a television screen. William Bryant died of cancer on June 26, 2001, at the age of 77, in Los Angeles. His estate, surprisingly substantial at $2.8 million, included beachfront property, classic cars, and collection of antique firearms. Virginia Gregg was born on March 6, 1916, and played the role of Nurse Wilma Jacobs in Emergency. In 1972, at the age of 56. As Nurse Jacobs, she brought an ironclad mix of compassion and intimidation to the emergency room, a no-nonsense professional who could silence a room with a glance. Audiences admired her quiet authority, and though her screen time was limited, her impact was unforgettable. Yet behind that composed facade was a woman shaped by shadows. Born to a frustrated opera singer and an absent father in Harrisburg, Illinois, Virginia's childhood was dominated by a domineering mother who forced her into music and radio to fulfill her own failed ambitions. This early control masked deeper turmoil. Virginia was known to have suffered severe depression as a teenager, and she once confessed in an unpublished interview that she learned to cry silently. Throughout her career, she became typecast as intense or tragic characters. Her eerie vocal performance as Norman Bates' mother in Psycho haunted even her personal life. She was passed over for leading roles repeatedly, with casting directors telling her she was too intelligent-looking or too harsh. Her most crushing failure came in the late 1950s, when she was recast from a lead radio drama after rumors swirled about her being difficult and unwilling to soften her tone for male colleagues. In truth, she refused to flirt or play submissive, which earned her a reputation for being cold and aloof. Married briefly to producer Jamie Del Valle, the marriage ended in a bitter and silent separation, leaving her to raise their only son alone. He later distanced himself, reportedly due to her controlling nature. Friends described her as both generous and fiercely guarded, rarely speaking about the death of her mother, which left her emotionally adrift. Virginia Gregg died on September 15, 1986, in Encino, California, from lung cancer at the age of 70. She left behind a modest estate, including a modest home in Studio City, a collection of vintage scripts and voiceover royalties, with a net worth estimated between $1 to $2 million. And Whitfield was born on August 27, 1938, and played Betty Johnson in Emergency. In 1972, at the age of 34. As Betty, she exuded gentle empathy and quiet strength, a stabilizing presence in the show's high-stakes world of trauma and rescue. But Anne's real life, far from Hollywood's glitz, was shaped by both early fame and a deliberate exit from it. A child star by the age of 6, and began in radio and earned acclaim as Susan Waverly in White Christmas, 1954, but she grew up feeling like a prop on set, praised when cute, ignored when not. Her parents pushed her hard, and she later confessed to friends that she had been groomed for fame, not life. By her 20s, she burned out on showbiz, disillusioned by the sexism, exploitation, and infantilization she faced as a young woman in Hollywood. Rumors suggest she once walked off a prominent TV role in the late 60s after an executive propositioned her during casting. While the press portrayed her as retiring for personal reasons, insiders knew she had begun rejecting the entire industry. She quietly moved to Washington State, far from paparazzi and red carpets, and embraced a different kind of life. Anne worked for the Department of Ecology, advocated for the homeless, and converted an old farmhouse into a modest bed and breakfast where she hosted retreats on sustainable living. Though outwardly serene, she struggled with lingering depression and regret over childhood years lost to studios and agents. She never married and had no children, saying once that her life was too full of ghosts, and died on February 15, 2024, at the age of 85, after being struck by a vehicle while walking near her home in Washington. Her estate, estimated at $1 to $2 million, included her rural property, modest investments, and environmental grants she had quietly managed. Jim B. Smith, born August 20, 1924, stepped into the role of a police sergeant in Emergency in 1974 at age 50. On screen, his firm jaw, commanding presence, and understated delivery perfectly embodied the seasoned lawman, coordinating calmly with paramedics and firefighters, grounding scenes of chaos with authority. What audiences didn't see was the deep trauma Smith carried beneath that uniformed calm. A World War II veteran who flew in the final bombing raid on Japan, Jim returned from war a haunted man. He rarely spoke of the friends he lost or the burning guilt he carried for decades. Acting became his therapy, his outlet to wear masks that helped him forget. But his career never quite soared. He spent years playing background roles while writing scripts that never got sold and songs that never charted. Though registered with ASCAP and respected among insiders for mentoring young talent like John Voight, Smith was bitter that his writing career never took off. Several people close to him claimed he battled intense bouts of depression and deep resentment toward an industry that constantly overlooked him. In private, he was known to be solitary and obsessive, often rewriting the same script drafts dozens of times. His marriage crumbled in the 1960s after his wife left him, citing emotional detachment and long absences. He never remarried and remained estranged from his only daughter, who accused him of prioritizing his artistic ambitions over family. Friends describe his apartment as filled with war memorabilia, uncashed royalty checks, and a locked drawer of rejection letters he refused to throw away. Though he stayed away from scandal, his inner life was far from peaceful. He died of cancer on May 7, 2009, at age 84. At the time of his death, his assets, including his modest San Fernando Valley home, pension, and creative rights, were valued between $1 to $2 million. Hollywood barely noticed his passing, but beneath his quiet legacy was a man whose disciplined exterior masked decades of buried pain, frustrated ambition, and emotional isolation. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Emergency who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.